In ancient days, when kingdoms rose with the sword and fell with fire, there lived a man feared and respected throughout the land of Syria. His name was Naaman. He was the commander of the king's army, a man of war who had led thousands of soldiers to victory. His presence commanded respect. His voice was firm. His decisions were as fast as lightning. From a young age, he had shown a special talent for war. No one knew for certain where he was born, but many believed he came from an honorable family, perhaps of warriors or servants of the king. What is certain is that from an early age he was trained to fight, to endure pain, and to never retreat. Over the years, Naaman became the strong arm of the kingdom of Syria. The king trusted him more than any other man. Every victory in battle increased his fame. Every defeated enemy strengthened his name. But there was something that no one could see at first glance. A dark secret hidden beneath his armor. Naaman had leprosy. The disease advanced slowly but surely. At first, there were small spots on his skin. No one noticed. Then the skin began to harden. After that came the pain and the fear. In those times, leprosy was not just a disease, it was a sentence. Lepers were cast out, rejected, considered unclean. But Naaman was not just any man. He was essential to the kingdom. His illness was kept a secret. Only his closest family knew. It is said that Naaman was married, although the Bible does not mention his wife's name or the number of his children. However, it is likely he had a family, since he was a man of high rank. His wife witnessed his suffering. She saw him hide his pain. She saw him endure in silence. In his house there was a young Israelite servant girl. She had been taken captive during a military raid. She was just a child, but her faith was strong. One day, seeing her master's suffering, the young girl spoke. She said that in Israel there was a prophet who could heal that disease, a man of God who performed miracles. Those words were like a spark in the middle of darkness. Naaman listened, and for the first time in a long while, he felt hope. The powerful warrior who had defeated entire armies was now facing a different battle. A battle against his own body, against fear, against despair. He decided to act. He went before the king and told him what he had heard. The king did not hesitate. He prepared the letter for the king of Israel. He sent gifts, gold, silver, and garments. No man would depart to a foreign land in search of healing, not as a conqueror, but as a man in need. Thus began the journey that would change his life forever. The strong man, the undefeated warrior, was about to learn a lesson that no battle had ever taught him. That there are forces greater than human power, and that sometimes true victory begins when a man recognizes his weakness. The road to Israel was full of uncertainty, but Naaman had no other choice. His body was fading, and his hope depended on a promise, the promise of a miracle. The journey of Naaman to the land of Israel was not like his military campaigns. This time he did not march with the pride of conquest, but with an invisible burden that weighed more than any armor. He was accompanied by horses, chariots, servants, and soldiers. He carried great riches with him, 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 sets of garments, everything prepared as payment for a miracle that had not yet happened. Every step of the journey was filled with thoughts. What if it did not work? What if it was all a lie? What if the prophet could not heal him, but deep in his heart there was something that did not fade? Hope. When he arrived in Israel, Naaman went directly to the king. He delivered the letter from the king of Syria. In it, he asked that his commander be healed of leprosy. The king of Israel read the letter, and he was filled with fear. He tore his clothes and said that this was a provocation. He thought the king of Syria was looking for an excuse to start a war. How could a man heal leprosy? But in Israel there was someone who truly knew the power of God, the prophet Elisha. When Elisha heard what had happened, he sent a message to the king. He asked him to send Naaman to his house. So the powerful Syrian general went to the place where the prophet lived. He arrived with his entire entourage. horses, chariots, soldiers, all the power that his position represented. He stopped at the door. He expected something great, perhaps a ceremony, maybe powerful words, an impressive act. But what happened was completely different. Elisha did not even come out to meet him. Instead, he sent a messenger. The message was simple, too simple. He told him to go to the Jordan River and wash 7 times. Then his flesh would be restored and he would be clean. Naaman could not believe it. His expression changed. His pride was hurt. He had traveled so far. He had brought riches. He had expected something worthy of his position. And now he was given such a simple order, so humiliating. He became angry. He said he expected the prophet to come out, call on his God, and touch the diseased area, to do something spectacular. But no, he had only been given one instruction: go to a river, dip himself 7 times, nothing more. Naaman began to live in anger. He said that in Syria there were better rivers than the Jordan, that he could wash in them and be clean. His anger grew with every step, but then something unexpected happened. His own servants approached him. They spoke to him with respect. They told him that if the prophet had asked him to do something difficult, he surely would have done it. So why not do something so simple? Those words touched something inside him. Naaman stopped. He thought. For a moment, pride struggled against faith. It was a decisive moment. He could return without trying anything, or he could humble himself and obey. The great warrior was facing the most difficult battle of his life, not against an external enemy, but against his own heart. And in that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. Naaman turned around, and he went toward the Jordan River. He did not know what would happen, but he was willing to try. The sun was setting over the waters of the river when Naaman arrived at the Jordan. The place was not impressive. There were no crowds, no visible signs of greatness, just a simple river, flowing in silence. Naaman stepped down from his chariot. His soldiers watched in silence, his servants too. No one said a word. The great commander, the man who had defeated armies, was about to do something he had never done before: take off his armor. When the metal left his body, what had been hidden was exposed. His skin showed the marks of leprosy, the spots, the decay, the fragility. The air touched his diseased skin. It was a moment of truth, without power, without titles, without glory. Just a sick man standing before a river. Naaman looked at the water. He remembered the words of the messenger of Elisha: 7 times, no more, no less. He took a deep breath and took the first step. He went down into the water. The water covered his body. For a moment, everything was silent. He came out of the water. Nothing had changed. The leprosy was still there. The second time, he went down again. He came up. Nothing. The third, the fourth, the fifth. With each immersion, doubt grew. Had it been a mistake to come? Had he trusted something false? The 6th time, he came out of the water. And still nothing. The silence was heavy. His men watched. The moment was tense. Everything seemed useless. But then he remembered. 7 times. One was still left. Naaman closed his eyes for a moment. This time, there was no pride, no anger, only faith. He went down into the water for the 7th time. The water covered him completely. 1 moment, 2, 3. And when he came up, something had changed. He looked at his arms, his skin. The spots were gone. The hardness had disappeared. The disease was no longer there. His skin was like that of a child, clean, new, perfect. Naaman could not believe it. He ran his hands over his body, again and again. It was real. He had been healed. The powerful warrior stood in silence. He did not shout. He did not celebrate as in war. This was a different moment, a sacred moment. He had received something no battle could give him: life, healing, hope. His men were also amazed. They had seen the miracle with their own eyes. Naaman dressed again, but now he was not the same man. Something inside him had changed, not only his body, but also his heart. He immediately returned to the house of the prophet, this time not as a proud man, but as someone grateful. When he arrived, he stood before Elisha and declared something he had never said before. He recognized that there was no God in all the earth except in Israel. It was a deep confession, a sincere recognition. The man who once trusted in his strength now recognized a greater power. He offered gifts to the prophet. He wanted to reward him. But Elisha refused. He accepted nothing. The miracle could not be bought. It had no price, Naaman insisted. But the answer was firm. No. Then he asked for something else, something unusual. He asked to take soil from Israel with him, so he could worship the true God in his own land. It was a sign of his change. He was no longer the same man. He no longer trusted in the gods of Syria. He had found the truth. And nothing would ever be the same again. After his healing, Naaman returned to Syria. His life changed forever. He was no longer just a powerful warrior, but a man who had experienced the power of God. Every day he remembered that moment at the Jordan and how obedience, though simple, had given him life. When he returned home, he shared his experience with his family. The young Israelite servant girl who had guided him to Elisha smiled with satisfaction when she saw that her master had changed. His wife and children learned to respect not only their father's strength, but also his new humility and faith. It is likely that Naaman had children, sons and daughters who grew up seeing an example of transformation and obedience. His reputation in Syria grew even stronger. The soldiers and the king recognized not only his military skill but also his integrity and faith, although war was still part of his life. Naaman understood that there was something more important than human victories: obedience to the true God. Over time, Naaman became a generous man. He remembered the days when his illness isolated him and understood the value of helping others. He shared his wealth, protected those in need, and gave wise advice to those who sought his guidance. His life became an example of how faith can transform even the strongest and most proud men. The leprosy that once made him fear and hide no longer existed, but the memory of his suffering remained as a reminder of human fragility. Naaman understood that true strength was not only in his ability to defeat armies, but in recognizing that he depended on something greater during his later years. Naaman maintained a close relationship with God. Every day he gave thanks for the healing and the life he had been given. He visited prophets and taught others to trust, always remembering that a simple act of obedience can bring extraordinary results. Through his example, Naaman taught Katet. Humility is a power greater than physical strength, that faith can open doors that no sword can open, that obedience can heal what no medicine can cure. Although his story began as that of a man feared and respected only for his strength and skill in war, it ended being remembered for his transformed heart, for his faith, and for the humility he embraced after knowing the true God. Naaman never forgot the lesson of the Jordan. Every action, every decision, every word reflected the deep transformation he had experienced. His life became a living testimony of the mercy and power of God, and an example for all who seek to change and improve their own destiny. The years continued to pass, and Naaman grew old with dignity and wisdom. His life, marked by military victories, trials of illness, and an unexpected miracle, became a story that inspired everyone around him. Every decision, every act of justice and kindness carried the mark of that encounter with the God of Israel. Naaman never again became the same arrogant man who had proudly marched to the Jordan. His heart had changed. He understood that true greatness did not lie in strength, nor in gold or titles, but in recognizing and obeying divine power. This truth stayed with him until his final days, guiding his actions, his treatment of his family, and his leadership in Syria. It is said that his children grew up seeing a living example of transformation. He taught them to value humility, faith, and obedience. He showed them that even the strongest men can be vulnerable, and that recognizing that vulnerability can open the door to miracles and blessings that life alone could never give. Throughout his life, Naaman faced battles. But not only on the fields of war, he also fought against pride, fear, and unbelief. His greatest victory was within. It was the victory of a man who understood that human strength is limited and that true protection and healing come from heaven. Although the years passed and Naaman grew old, his reputation did not fade. He was remembered not only as the feared commander of Syria, but as the man who was healed by faith, who recognized the true God, and who left a legacy of obedience and humility for future generations. His story crossed borders, inspiring many to trust more in God than in their own power. Finally, Naaman died surrounded by his family and the gratitude of those who knew him. His body rested, but his example lived on. The healing he received in the Jordan became a symbol of mercy and the power of faith, reminding everyone that no illness, no pride, and no human strength can compare to the strength of a spirit that trusts and obeys. Naaman's legacy was not only the healing of his body, but the transformation of his soul. From that river to his final days, his life taught that true power is found in humility, that faith can change the impossible, and that even the strongest man can be touched and guided by a divine power. And so ended the story of Naaman, the man who defeated armies, faced leprosy, and found true greatness in obedience, in faith. His name was written not only in the history of Syria, but in the memory of all who understand the strength that comes from believing and trusting. If this message has touched your heart, you are invited to join this family of faith. Subscribe to this channel and join us each week to continue learning from the stories and teachings God has for us. Turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any video. Thank you for being here, and may God bless your life.